This is Aaron Burr. I'm pretty sure you all know who he is. He's the guy from the musical Hamilton who shot Alexander Hamilton in a duel and came within inches of occupying the Oval Office, but fell short to Thomas Jefferson after 36 ballots of voting in the House of Representatives in a contingent election after a tie occurred between them in the 1800 presidential election. A common misconception is that Alexander Hamilton was a deciding factor in getting Federalists to vote for Thomas Jefferson and ultimately gave Thomas Jefferson the presidency. This is not true. Hamilton, while he did endorse Jefferson, he did not play much of a role in getting Federalists to vote for Jefferson or withhold their opposition to Jefferson. In fact, another misconception is that after Burr's defeat to Jefferson, he shot Alexander Hamilton in a duel, but this is not true. It was actually after a defeat in the 1804 New York governor's race that Burr killed Alexander Hamilton in a duel because Alexander Hamilton was writing some stuff about Burr, which Burr did not like, notably calling him someone without an ideology, also calling him like a bad man, and after losing the 1804 New York race, Burr blamed the loss on Hamilton and challenged him to a duel and ultimately ended up killing him. Now, in the House of Representatives, Federalists held a majority in the House of Representatives, but they did not hold a majority of state delegations. In a contingent election in the House of Representatives, it doesn't require a majority of the House, but rather a majority of the state delegations which are in the House of Representatives. And the Federalists, they controlled roughly about, let's see here, they controlled New York, they controlled Pennsylvania, they controlled New Jersey, Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Kentucky, which is a total of 7 delegations, while the Federalists, they controlled Georgia, South Carolina, Maryland, Delaware, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine, which is a total of 9 delegations, while 1 delegation was split. However, during the contingent election, the Federalists, the Democratic Republicans, they performed pretty well in the 1800 House elections, and they flipped the Maryland and Georgia delegations, which gave them a total of 9 House delegations. Meanwhile, actually, they flipped Georgia, which gave them 8 delegations. Maryland was split, while Federalists kept their majorities in South Carolina, Delaware, and the other states you see up here. So, the Federalist plan was to either delay the election in the House as long as possible, because Jefferson, he fell 1 state short of getting a majority, and the Federalist plan was to delay the election as long as possible to keep voting for Burr ballot after ballot after ballot, and hope that there would be no president elected by the inauguration deadline, which was somewhere in March. And by that time, since there was no president, the Secretary of State, John Marshall, would become acting president. This plan, however, did not work, as ultimately the delegations in South Carolina, Vermont, Delaware, and Maryland, they all flipped from either being split to voting for Jefferson, which gave Jefferson 4 new states and ultimately helped him prevail on the 36th ballot. And this got Thomas Jefferson elected president, and Aaron Burr became vice president. Now, Jefferson, it is very possible that to become elected president, Jefferson had to make concessions to these Federalists in the House of Representatives in order to gain their votes. And while they didn't actually vote for Jefferson, what they did is they voted present in order to lower the threshold for Jefferson to gain a majority of their state delegations and then get their state's votes. And it is actually very possible that Jefferson did make concessions, given the fact that when he became elected president, he did support a variety of things which he opposed back in the 1790s, which included a stronger federal government, such as when he used this federal government to establish a military academy at West Point, and also to raise tariffs, which were ideas that the Federalist Party supported. Aaron Burr ultimately became vice president, but a possible way for Aaron Burr to become elected president would be for the Federalists to do better in the 1800 House elections, and that would give had Federalists been able to gain a majority of state delegations, and if Aaron Burr was able to use his political influence in New York to get the votes from the New York delegations, it is possible that Aaron Burr could have been elected president, and this would have kept Thomas Jefferson in the vice president spot for another 4 years. Democratic Republicans would not be happy about this, but Aaron Burr would become president. And Aaron Burr, to understand Aaron Burr, he was not a man of ideology. He did not have any sort of ideology whatsoever. He really just followed the political party which he believed would help him get a leg up and would help and he was more so motivated by ambition rather than ideology. That was his one underlying principle, was to gain as much power as possible. And if that required becoming a Federalist, then Aaron Burr would have switched to the Federalist Party after seeing that that was the party which helped him gain success and become President of the United States. As president, and in fact many Federalists, they did support Aaron Burr during the 1800 or the 1804 New York governor's race, because they believed that Aaron Burr would become part of a plan to separate New York as well as all of the New England states and become an independent country. And many of the New England lawyers who had wanted to become their own independent country, a Federalist country, they needed support from New York, and to do so, they wanted Aaron Burr to become governor, and Aaron Burr most likely was part of this plan to separate New England from the rest of the country. And it's most likely that if Aaron Burr was elected president, the Louisiana Purchase would have never happened, because many Federalists opposed the Louisiana Purchase because of the fact that it was a treaty with Napoleon, and many Federalists were opposed to France. They wanted stronger ties to the British rather than to Napoleon, so they would have opposed the Louisiana Purchase. And because the Federalists were the ones who gave Aaron Burr the presidency, Burr would have followed their advice, and he would not have bought the entire territory of Louisiana from the French. It's also very possible that Aaron Burr would keep the Alien and Sedition Acts rather than repealing them like Thomas Jefferson did, and the Alien and Sedition Acts would still be in law. Also, the Supreme Court case Marbury versus Madison would have never happened because of the fact that the whole case was basically happened because of the fact that a judge named William Marbury, he was denied his seat on some judicial court, and because of that, he sued. But Aaron Burr would have kept Marbury's appointment to the court rather than revoking it like Jefferson did. And because of this, Marbury wouldn't have sued, and the case Marbury versus Madison would never have happened, and thus the power of judicial review and the Supreme Court's power would be severely limited and not nearly to the extent of power that it is today. You also would have seen Aaron Burr would likely still have made West Point into a military academy, and probably he would have followed the same military approach that Jefferson did regarding the Barbary Wars. You also may have seen some increased conflict between the French and the Americans as a result of Federalists taking power through Aaron Burr, and it is possible that we could see some military conflict occur between the French and the British, but it's unlikely that official war would be declared because of Democratic-Republican control of Congress, as well as the American public being vehemently opposed to war with France. And the territories of North America, as we can see today, would be completely different due to the fact that without the Louisiana Purchase occurring, the Louisiana would be its own independent country rather than being part of America. And Mexico, Mexico would most likely still control the area that we got from Mexico after the Mexican-American War, which would include California, Arizona, Nevada, parts of New Mexico, parts of Utah, and that whole southwestern territory would still remain part of Mexico. The state of Texas would also still be part of Mexico, and the British would control the northwestern United States. We could also, now a big question is whether the Federalists would keep Aaron Burr in the 1804 presidential election. There would be a group of Federalists led by Alexander Hamilton who would still be alive by this point because of the fact that Aaron Burr would shoot him, obviously. So Alexander Hamilton would have opposed Aaron Burr's bid for president. He would have done everything he could for the Federalists to deny him the presidency. But while the Federalists were divided, the Democratic Republicans, they would remain unified behind James Madison, and because of the Federalist division, James Madison would be elected president in 1804. And he would have initiated many of the same policies that Thomas Jefferson did in his first term, which would be and in this case, it would have happened during Madison's term from 1805 to 1809. So the really big changes which we would see under an Aaron Burr presidency would be that the Supreme Court would be significantly weaker today, and because it would not have the power of judicial review, and we would also see very different American borders as a result of Manifest Destiny never happening, because the whole reason why Manifest Destiny occurred was because of American expansion, which started with the Louisiana Purchase. And without American expansion and the control of Louisiana Territory, when Napoleon would fall from power and the territory of Louisiana would be in the hands of the Kingdom of France, and then eventually probably it would become its own independent country, like similar to Canada or Mexico. It could become similar to Mexico in the sense that the natives inhabiting it would take control of the country, or it could become similar to Canada in the sense that the French settlers there gain independence from France. So we would see an independent country of Louisiana, and the Mexican secession territory would remain a part of Mexico today, and the British, and in this case Canada, would be in control of the northwestern United States, which includes Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and yeah, that territory. And we could also see slavery get abolished much later than it actually did, because without American expansionism, the Civil War would most likely never have happened, because the Civil War was a conflict over whether the South wanted to expand slavery into new territories, and without the South being able to expand slavery to new territories, the Civil War may have still occurred, but it would have become much less bloody, and it would have ended much more quickly. However, it's possible that slavery would have died a natural death because there was no expansion into westward territories. Therefore, slavery would most likely die a natural death somewhere into the mid-1900s. So anyway, you guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And also, please like this video. And thank you for watching.